Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamlam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitam Scha Om Jnana Timaranda Shagyanajana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhishtam Supurakam Guraganara Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanagam Govinda Abhidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhakyan Vidam Sundaram Bande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavad Prem Noe Bija Pradam Devam Divyatanum Suchandavaranam Balarka Shailanshitam Sandrananda Puram Sadekavaranam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Banditam Shubharam Marega Sharanam Nyashishwara Sridharam Vanshikopatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratabhishe Namah. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, The Hidden Treasure of the Sweet Absolute, with translation and commentary by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj, and translation into English by Sripad Swarupananda Prabhu. And we're on chapter 2, Sankhya-yoga, the constitution of the soul. And I'm going to reread verse number 39. We'll start from there. Esha te bhita sankhye buddhir yoge tvimam shrinu Budhya yukto yaya parta karma bandham prahasyasi. I have revealed to you this knowledge, buddhi, of the soul. Now hear from me how to act in this knowledge, bhakti yoga, through which you will be able to free yourself from the bondage of action. Commentary. It will be revealed that buddhi yoga, yoga of wisdom, is a singular path. When buddhi yoga is seen to be limited by the ideal of action, it is known as karma yoga. When it extends beyond action up to the peak of knowledge, it is known as jnana yoga or Sankhya-yoga. And when transcending the limitations of both action and knowledge, it touches bhakti or devotion. It is then known as bhakti yoga or perfectly pure and complete buddhi yoga. This is by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So what is being talked about here is bhakti. When it's mixed with karma, then it is karma mishra bhakti, or karma mishra yoga, we can say. And when it's mixed with, so it's karma mishra bhakti. When it's mixed with gyan, it's jnana mishra bhakti. But it is not pure bhakti. So, when it transcends the limits of both action and knowledge, then it becomes bhakti. Or as Srila Rupa Goswami, we quoted that verse. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukuyena krishnanu shilanam bhakti arutama. So if it's beyond the limitations of karma and beyond the limitations of jnana, then what is the criteria? What makes it bhakti? And it says, anukuyasya sang anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukuyena and it's jnana. Anyabhilashita shunyam ganakarmadi anavritam anukuyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktirutama. Anukuyena krishnanu shilanam. It has to be done in a mood of service which is favorable to Krishna. So how will we know what is service that is favorable to Krishna? That service will be given to us or directed by the spiritual master. Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Rutama. Then it's actually pure bhakti. When every consideration is not centered upon the individual actor, we could say, or the individual person who is executing the actions, but it's centered upon satisfying Krishna. That's the only criterion. So, Neha Bikramo Nashosti Pratyavayo na vidyate Svalpam Apiyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. On this path there is no loss and no harm. The slightest practice of such a spiritual ideal saves one from the greatest fear. On this path there can be no loss and no harm. The slightest practice of such a spiritual ideal saves one from the greatest fear. Mahabhaya, the greatest fear, is generally considered to be the fear of repeated birth and death in this world. But Mahabhaya also refers to Sayuja Mukti, the liberation of merging into the impersonal, non-differentiated consciousness of Brahmaloka, Viraja, or a kind of impersonal samadhi. Renunciation alone leads to Sayuja Mukti, the cessation of birth and death, but not to a life in the positive plane. It takes one to a permanent burial in Brahmaloka, the impersonal plane. The demon of mukti will devour one wholesale, and therefore it is even more dangerous than this ordinary life of action and reaction. Mukti means a strike in the organic system, so it must be avoided. For example, to either ignore duties in a factory or to declare a strike by cessation of duties are both abnormal. Bhukti, exploitation, and mukti, renunciation, bhukti, exploitation, and mukti, renunciation, are both fearsome ghosts. So bhukti is the enjoying spirit, and mukti is, of course, renunciation. So bhukti, exploitation, and mukti, renunciation, are both fearsome ghosts. Therefore, here, Mahabhaya means the great apprehension of falling prey to both the ghost of exploitation leading to birth and death, as well as the ghost of committing suicide by merging into the impersonalism or of incarceration in Brahmaloka, fear of both Bhoga Bhumi, the land of exploitation, and Tyaga Bhumi, the plain of renunciation. It is stated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhukti Mukti Spriya Yavat Pisachi Ridi Vartate Tavad Bhakti Sukhashatra Katam Abhyudayo Bhavet. The ecstasy of devotion to Krishna will never appear in a heart that is haunted by the ghost of exploitation and renunciation. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukuyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. The highest devotion is that which is cultivated for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord Krishna, with no desire except to serve him, and divested of all external attempts such as worldly action, knowledge in search of the impersonal absolute, or the meditational attempt to become one with God. The highest devotion is that which is cultivated for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord Krishna, with no desire except to serve him, and divested of all external attempts such as worldly action, knowledge in search of the impersonal absolute, or the meditational attempt to become one with God. Only the Supreme Lord is abhaya, beyond apprehension. Therefore, nothing but participation in his service can free one from the ghost of exploitation and renunciation, bhukti and mukti. If we subtract Bhukti and mukti, then only positive bhakti, devotion, is the remainder. Therefore, without devotion, everything is mahabhaya, great danger. So this is a very crucial verse of the Bhagavad Gita, where it says, Neha bikramo nashosti pratyavayo navidyate svabhamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. On this path there can be no loss and no harm. The slightest practice of such a spiritual ideal saves one from the greatest fear. So there's also this positive element with this verse, that even the slightest practice of such a spiritual ideal saves one from the greatest fear. And that can also be understood, because if you have an ideal, even if you you're not able to attain that ideal, just the fact that you have that ideal means you're going in the right direction. So that's positive. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakya yanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahu shakya yanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. O descendant of the Kuru dynasty, resolute intelligence dedicated to me is one-pointed. I am its only objective, but irresolute intelligence is displayed by endless desires for mundane enjoyment. So, O descendant of the Kuru dynasty, resolute intelligence dedicated to me is one-pointed. I am its only objective, but irresolute intelligence is displayed by endless desires for mundane enjoyment. So this is vyavasayatmika buddhi. This vyavasayatmika buddhi, the resolute intelligence. So that means that intelligence is focused, pinpointed, only on serving Krishna and satisfying Krishna. Whereas if the intelligence is not fixed like that or focused, then the intelligence will become splayed or spread all over, because it will be fixed on this and then fixed on that and fixed on that, because there's so many desires for sense enjoyment that one's intelligence becomes just scattered everywhere. But when one is determined to serve Krishna and fixed on his service, then we call that vyavasayatmika buddhi. Very important that it is completely, we can say, focused only on Krishna. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipaschita Vedavara rata parta nanyad astiti vadina. O Partha, unwise persons, not knowing that the chief directive of the Vedas is the attainment of the supreme truth, are fond of interpreting the fleetingly enchanting words of the Karmakanda section of the Vedas as ultimate. O Partha, unwise persons, not knowing that the chief directive of the Vedas is the attainment of the supreme truth, and they are fond of interpreting the fleeting enchanting words of the Karmakanda section of the Vedas as ultimate. So under the Karmakanda section of the Vedas deals with how to elevate one's level of enjoyment, of how to attain even the higher planets where one can have years of enjoyment. But that is, here it says, unwise persons, they get deviated by this section, by the Karmakanda, and they're thinking that this will help me to have enjoyment in this world. So they're unwise, and they say, unwise persons, not knowing that the chief directive of the Vedas is the attainment of the supreme truth, not knowing that the Vedas, as Krishna says, Vedaischa sarvairaham, Vedaischa sarvairaham eva vedyo vedantakrid vedavid evachaham. That Krishna says, I'm the knower of the Vedas, I'm the compiler of the Vedas, and by the Vedas I am all that is to be known. And Krishna, through his literary incarnation of Vedavyas, he's compiled the Vedas. But the persons don't always understand what is the purpose of the Vedas. And therefore, Narad Muni, he came to correct Vedavyas. And he said, you're presenting so much confusion for persons. And to clarify that, he compiled what is the essence of the Vedas to properly channel the persons towards their relationship with the Supreme Lord, and that was presented in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Kamatmana svargapara janma karma phala pradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishvarya gatim prati. Their hearts are filled with desires, and their goal is heaven. They advocate the many sacrifices and rituals that yield wealth, worldly pleasures, and high birth. So that will be the normal concern of persons, and we know this is Vedas dealing with Dharma. On the mundane platform especially, we can say Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Religion, execution of religious principles, Dharma, Artha, for economic development, Dharma, Artha, Kama, so one can have facilities for enjoying in this life or in this world, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and ultimately those who are supposedly enlightened, they will then, after their fruitless endeavors for karma, Dharma, Artha, and Kama, then they will try for moksha, for liberation. Their hearts are filled with desires, and their goal is heaven. So heaven is just the heavenly planets or heaven. People have no conception of what spiritual life is, so they're thinking if they can go to heaven, there's facilities for them to enjoy on a higher level, and they're thinking that they'll meet with their friends in heaven and have that kind of continuation and extension of their worldly life. Their hearts are filled with desires, and their goal is heaven. They advocate the many sacrifices and rituals that yield wealth, worldly pleasures, and high birth. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya parita chedasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadona vidhiyate. Thus attached to enjoyment and opulence, deluded by these flowery words of the Vedas, they do not attain the resolve to dedicate themselves to the Supreme Lord. Thus attached to enjoyment and opulence, deluded by these flowery words of the Vedas, they do not attain the resolve to dedicate themselves to the Supreme Lord. So they're attached to those parts of the Vedas that will, here it's mentioned, they're flowery words of the Vedas, those parts that they can utilize to continue and extend their enjoyment. Trigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvanvo Nitya Sattvasto Niryoga Shema Atmavan. So those persons who are overly attached, they don't have that vyavasayatmika buddhi, that focused intelligence to be able to pursue the path of devotional service. So then samado na vidhiyate. Therefore, their dedication to the Supreme Lord, na vidhiyate, is not accomplished. So that goes back to the idea of vyavasayatmika buddhi, ekehe kurunandana, ekeha kurunandana, bahushakya yanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. They don't O descendant of the Kuru dynasty, resolute intelligence dedicated to me is one-pointed. I am its only objective. But irresolute intelligence is displayed by endless desires for mundane enjoyment. So these subsequent verses that we're reading, they give us that idea of how the intelligence is lost or displayed by endless desires. Uparta, unwise persons, not knowing that the chief directive of the Vedas is the attainment of the supreme truth, are fond of interpreting the fleetingly enchanting words of the Karmakanda section of the Vedas as ultimate. Now, this is all forms of splayed intelligence, where vyavasayatmika buddhi, the concentration on serving the Lord, cannot be attained. Their hearts are filled with desires, and their goal is heaven. They advocate the many sacrifices and rituals that yield wealth, worldly pleasures, and high birth. So they're very much interested in these so-called goals of the Vedas, which are dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. But the Srimad Bhagavatam itself says that these kind of goals are rejected. Ultimately, they are dharma, artha, kama, moksha. It is that those goals are they're considered cheating. They're cheating oneself, of the actual purpose of the Vedas. Thus attached to enjoyment and opulence, deluded by these flowery words of the Vedas, they do not attain the resolve to dedicate themselves to the Supreme Lord. Trigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Parvarjana Nirdvanvo Nityasattvasto Niryoga Shema Atmavan. O Arjuna, the Vedas deal with the three modes of material nature by accommodating fruitive action and liberation as an allowance and incentive for persons who are ignorant of the true objective of the Vedas. But you, Arjuna, give up duality and all pursuits for gain and preservation. Stand ever in the plane of truth, and by the yoga of wisdom transcend the modes of nature. O Arjuna, the Vedas deal with these three modes of material nature by accommodating fruitive action and liberation as an allowance and incentive for persons who are ignorant of the true objective of the Vedas. But you, Arjuna, give up duality and all pursuits for gain and preservation. Stand ever in the plane of truth, and by the yoga of wisdom transcend the modes of nature. The objective of the Vedas is transcendental. Without fruitive action or liberation, O Arjuna, follow the transcendental path of devotion to the Lord as taught by the Vedas. So Krishna here, of course, is educating Arjuna, because Arjuna is on the, you can say, the outskirts of the battlefield. He's about to enter into the war in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So at first he's very much not only undecided, but doesn't want to engage in this warfare. But at the same time, these instructions of Krishna are telling him, don't be concerned with any kind of peripheral attainments like elevation for yourself or your friends. Don't worry about elevation to the higher planetary systems or attainment of any kind of worldly goals. Or don't think about renunciation, which will ultimately lead to liberation. But Krishna is telling Arjuna that you should be come to that plane of vyavasayatmika buddhi, where you're just focused on your relationship with the Lord. Now, of course, we know that Arjuna is the eternal devotee, or servant, friend of the Lord. And Krishna is present before him, giving him instructions. So all this is meant for bringing Arjuna to the proper understanding, and he will always be situated in that proper understanding in his relationship with Krishna. Therefore, it is Bhagavad Gita. This is a song of the divine, song of the divine, and it's dealing with service to the divine. And that is Bhakti. And Krishna says, and this will be all-inclusive. This will be an all-inclusive position for you by taking up that focused service and relationship with Krishna. Yavanarta udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanata. Yavanarta udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanata. As all the purposes served by several ponds can be served better by a large lake, similarly, the fruits of worshiping the various gods by their respective Vedic prayers are surpassed by serving me, the knower of Brahman, who thus knows the purport of the Vedas, fulfills all life's objectives. As all the purposes served by several ponds can be served better by a large lake, similarly, the fruits of worshiping the various gods by their respective Vedic prayers are surpassed by serving me, the knower of Brahman, who thus knows the purport of the Vedas, fulfills all life's objectives. So the devas, the demigods, they're not independent. They're not independent of the Lord. They're all, we can say, within the administration of the Lord. They're all receiving their power, their position, everything by the will of the Lord. And they are all, we can say, in a subservient position to the Lord. So whatever is offered to the demigods, that can be, they're not independent. So whatever is offered to the Lord will automatically, we can say, that will include satisfaction of all the devas. Just like the example is given, that if we put water on the root of a tree, then all the twigs, branches, flowers, they're all nourished. They all receive that water. Whereas if you put water individually on the branches or the flowers without putting water on the root, that will not achieve a desirable result. They won't get any real benefit by that. It may keep them moist for a few hours or something, but the real benefit will come when the root is watered. Then all parts of the plant will get that nourishment. Karmani evadikaraste maphaleshu karachana makarma phalaheturbur mate sango strakarmani. Karmani evadikaraste maphaleshu karachana makarma phalaheturbur mate sango strakarmani. Your right is to your work, never to the fruits. Be neither motivated by the fruit of action, nor inclined to give up action. Your right is to your fruit, never to the fruits. Your right is to your work, never to the fruits. Be neither motivated by the fruit of action, nor inclined to give up action. So this is, again, applied to the practical level of how one is living, what are one's actions in life, And it is, of course, directed very much to Arjuna. But this is all related to what Krishna is saying about vyavasayatmika buddhi. But that the focus has to be always to serve the Lord. And therefore we understand your right is to your work. Work means engagement in devotional service. Your right is to your work, never to the fruits. It doesn't mean that there will not be any fruits from one's actions, but that is not the point. That is not the focus. Your right is to your work, never to the fruits. So you have a right to engage in devotional service, and there may be some fruits from the actions, but that is not your right. Is not that you are guaranteed fruits. Rather, your right is to your work, never to the fruits. Be neither motivated by the fruit of action nor inclined to give up action. So, be neither motivated by the fruit. That will not be the focus. The focus is not the benefits or the fruits that you'll get by your actions. They may come, but that is not the motivation. Be neither motivated by the fruit of action nor inclined to give up action. Or if one cannot, in the case of Arjuna, he doesn't see any benefit that will come from engaging in this warfare because he thinks everything will be tainted by the blood of his family members, etc. And he says, what good will come of this? But Krishna says, your right is to your work, never to the fruits. Be neither motivated by the fruit of action, nor inclined to give up action. If you can't see what is the benefit for you, that is not the consideration. That therefore I won't act because I don't see what the personal benefit is coming to me. But it is not in your work. That is not your right to either calculate what benefits you will receive, nor is it your right to give up that action if you cannot see your personal benefit. This is on the divine plane of service, and these are not the considerations. Yogasta koru karmani sangam chaktva dhananjaya siddhi asidyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchayate. Yogasta guru karmani sangam chaktva dhananjaya sidyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchate. O Dhananjaya, give up the ego that you are the doer and be equipoised in success and failure. Thus stand firm in the plane of yoga and do your prescribed duties. Such a state of balance is indeed known as yoga. O Dhananjaya, give up the ego that you are the doer and be equipoised in success and failure. Thus stand firm in the plane of yoga and do your prescribed duties. Such a state of balance is indeed known as yoga. So we are not to approach devotional service with the ego that we are the doer, that we are the one who is the actual doer of our actions. Rather, in the plane of bhakti, we are not the doer of the actions, but we are just instruments in the service of the Lord. So we're to give up that ego that everything is being done by us and everything is being engineered by us. And be equipoised in success and failure. And also, our motivation is not success and failure, and indeed, by our actions, we may have some success or we may also have failure. Thus stand firm in the plane of yoga and do your prescribed duties. Do what is your prescribed duties. Such a state of balance is indeed known as yoga. Durena yavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddho sharanam anvitsya kripana phalahetava Durena yavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddho sharanam anvicha kripana phalahetava. O Dhananjaya, fruit of action is far inferior to this yoga of wisdom. Those motivated by the fruits of their actions are misers. Therefore, seek refuge in the selfless wisdom of equanimity. O Dhananjaya, Arjuna is Dhananjaya, the conqueror of wealth, or winner of wealth. I believe he received this name during especially the Rajasuya sacrifice, which was meant to enshrine Maharaj Yudhishthira afterwards on the throne. And everyone will give some tribute, showing that they accept Maharaj Yudhishthira as the rightful king. And Arjuna is sent out, and he is receiving tributes from all the different kings to bring to Maharaj Yudhishthira. If someone doesn't accept Maharaj Yudhishthira, then they can challenge Arjuna. But he is Dhananjaya, the winner of wealth. O Dhananjaya, fruit of action is far inferior to this yoga of wisdom. Those motivated by the fruits of their actions are misers. Therefore, seek refuge in the selfless wisdom of equanimity. So those motivated by the fruits of their actions are misers. Misers mean they're very selfish in their attitude. They're not seeing that I'm not the doer of my action. I am rather a servant of the Lord. And those motivated by the fruits of their actions are misers. They're not actually seeing that my actions, my thoughts, everything is meant for the service of the Lord. Therefore, Arjuna, seek refuge in the selfless wisdom of equanimity. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ube sukrita duskrite tasmad yogaya yujasva yoga karma sukaushalam. Okay, this is very, very also quoted by Srila Govinda Maharaj. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ube sukrita duskrite tasmad yogaya yujasva yoga karma sukoshalam. The wise person abstains from both good and bad actions in this world. Engage thus in yoga, as yoga is the art of all works. So that phrase is yoga karma sukoshalam. Yoga is the art of all works. Engaging in yoga, engage in yoga is the art of all works. If you maintain this consciousness when performing your actions, that it is all focused on satisfying Krishna, of serving Krishna, and not being seen as that I am the doer of the actions, nor being a miser thinking that the results of the actions are meant for me, nor will I abandon that work which seems unfavorable in terms of giving me the results that I cherish or want. So then, this is Buddhi yukto jahatiha ube sukrita duskrite tasmad yogaya yujasva yoga karma sukoshalam. And Govinda Maharaj would quote that, yoga karma sukoshalam. Yoga is the art of all works, how to do all works, how to live in this world, how to perform actions. Yoga karma sukoshalam. That yoga is the art of all works. If you can do all works in the plane of yoga, that will be the proper formula. Yoga is the art of all works. Yoga karma sukoshalam. So the words here, yoga. Koshalam is the expertise, karmasu, of action. So yoga is knowing how to expertly perform all actions. Yoga koshalam, yoga karmasu koshalam. Yoga is the art of knowing how to perform actions with the proper consciousness. So yoga, yoga koshalam is the expertise, karmasu, of action, of how to act. So Govinda Maharaj would quote that phrase, yoga karmasu koshalam. Yoga is the art of all action. Karmajam buddhiyukta hi phalam chaktva manishina janmabandha vinirmukta param gachanti anamayam. Karmajam buddhiyukta hi phalam chaktva manishina janmabandha vinirmukta param gachanti anamayam. The wise are enlightened by giving up the fruits of their actions and thus attaining liberation from the bondage of birth. They reach the plane beyond all suffering. The wise are enlightened by giving up the fruits of their actions. They're not attached to the results, the fruits of their action. The wise are enlightened by giving up the fruits of their actions and thus attaining liberation from the bondage of birth. They reach the plane beyond all suffering. The plane of devotion, the plane beyond all suffering, beyond the mundanity of this world. The wise are enlightened by giving up the fruits of their actions and thus attaining liberation from the bondage of birth. They reach the plane beyond all suffering. That's the spiritual plane of devotion. Yadati mohakalilam buddhir vyatitarishyati tara gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. When your intelligence fully emerges from the dense forest of illusion, you will be indifferent to all that has been heard or is yet to be heard. When your intelligence fully emerges from the dense forest of illusion, you'll be indifferent to all that has been heard or is yet to be heard. And when Raghunath Das Goswami came to Mahaprabhu, and through Swarup Damodar, he told Swarup Damodar that he wanted to question Mahaprabhu directly, and for what purpose has he given up his family life, etc. So Mahaprabhu instructed him, and Raghunath Das Goswami, he asked Mahaprabhu, please give me some directive, and Mahaprabhu said, do not listen to Gramya Katha. Gramya Katha means normal, mundane talks. People talk. What basically people talk is Gramya Katha. And as we hear in Upadeshamrita, it says, Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagra. Prajalpo means idle talks. So, you shall attain perfect yoga or pure devotion when your intelligence, undisturbed by the apparent contradictions of the Vedas. When your intelligence fully emerges from the dense forest of illusion, you will be indifferent to all that has been heard or is yet to be heard. Okay. And Shruti vipratipanate yadastas yati nischala samada vachala buddhis tara yogam avapshasi Shruti vipratipanate yada stasyati nischala. samada vachala buddhis tada yogam avapshasi. You shall attain perfect yoga or pure devotion when your intelligence, undisturbed by the apparent contradictions of the Vedas, abides in the Lord. You shall attain perfect yoga or pure devotion when your intelligence, undisturbed by the apparent contradictions of the Vedas, abides in the Lord. So, perhaps some persons can cite so many verses of the Vedas that deal with so many esoteric points or philosophical points, or present something that seems of confusion. But actually, when we're engaged in devotion, we won't be concerned with all these apparent anomalies, contradictions, but rather we're going on in devotion. I'm not presenting myself as a great scholar or knower of the Vedas, but rather I'm going on in terms of what is the conclusion of the Vedas, which is to recognize oneself, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, to see that the jiva is the eternal servant of the Lord. And if I can understand that, yes, I'm reading the Lord's instructions, I'm hearing about the Lord, this will be something very wonderful for me. And in particular, I like to hear every day the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Especially if I'm able to do that, then I will feel that is a very good day for me to be able to do that. Sometimes, apparently, there may be some activities that may engage one and so many necessities that come up. But as much as possible, that will be guidance for one. And I'm not so much concerned about, philosophical discussions on points that seem contradictory of the Vedas. You shall attain perfect yoga or pure devotion when your intelligence, undisturbed by the apparent contradictions of the Vedas, abides in the Lord. So, you're leaving now?
Yes, Maharaj. I'll be flying back on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, have a good trip.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Okay, we hope to see you soon.
Yes, I'll be
All
back.
right. Okay.
God willing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Done. Okay. Stita pragyasya kabasha samadhi stasya keshava stita di kim prabhasheta kim asita rajeta kim. ¿Tú puedes cerrar esto? Okay. Do you understand Spanish?
Poquito.
Okay. Okay. Stita pragyasya kamasya samadhi stasya keshava stita di kim prabhasyeta kim asita vrajeta kim. Arjuna said, O Keshava, what are the characteristics of the person of firmly established wisdom, who is fully absorbed in consciousness of the Supreme, Samadhi? How does such a man of steady mind speak, be, and act in this world? Arjuna said, O Keshava, what are the characteristics of the person of firmly established wisdom, who is fully absorbed in consciousness of the supreme samadhi. How does such a man of steady mind speak, be, and act in the world? Act in this world. Arjuna said, O Keshava, what are the characteristics of the person of firmly established wisdom, who is fully absorbed in consciousness of the supreme samadhi? How does such a man of steady mind speak, be, and act in this world? So Arjuna is asking, what are the characteristics of that person who has attained the perfectional plane and stage of devotion? How will that person act? How will he speak? Are there any characteristics by which that person can be known? Prajahati yada kamam. Sri Bhagavan uvacha. First, this other question was Arjuna uvacha. Stita pragyasya kabasha samadhis tasya keshava. Stita div kim prabhasheta kim ashita vrajeta kim. Sri Bhagavan uvacha prajahati yada kaman sarvan bharta manogatan atmani evatmana tushta stita pragyas tadochate. Now, Krishna answers. The Supreme Lord said, O Partha, one who rejects all desires that enter the mind and remains self-satisfied within is known as a person whose wisdom is firmly established. The Supreme Lord said, O Partha, one who rejects all desires that enter the mind and remains self-satisfied within is known as a person whose wisdom is firmly established. So that person won't be disturbed that so many desires enter into the mind, but that person is not disturbed by those desires that are entering the mind. He's also not acting upon those desires. The Supreme Lord said, O Partha, one who rejects all desires that enter the mind and remains self-satisfied within is known as a person whose wisdom is firmly established. And as we said, this discussion is ongoing, and it's resolved when the Lord is talking about vyavasayatmika buddhi. He's talking about that wisdom or intelligence which is focused, and that is focused on only the satisfaction of the Lord, whereas one who lacks that resolute intelligence or determination, their desires will be all over. They'll be splayed. So what's vyavasayatmika buddhi means that focused intelligence. So here the Lord says, O Partha, one who rejects all desires that enter the mind and remains self-satisfied within is known as a person whose wisdom is firmly established. Dukesh vanudvigna mana sukeshu vigata spriya vitaraga bhaya kroda stita dir munir uchate. Dukesh vanudvigna mana sukeshu vigata spriya vitaraga bhaya kroda stita dir munir uchate. One who is undisturbed by sorrow, whose hankering for pleasure has gone, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is known as a silent sage of steady mind. One who is undisturbed by sorrow, whose hankering for pleasure is gone, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is known as a silent sage of steady mind. Later in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prashanat Manashochatina Kankshati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktir Labate Param. So Krishna says that one who has attained the Brahmabhuta stage, or the stage of steadiness, or we could say beyond material. The stage Brahmabhuta means the spiritual stage, beyond the material position, liberated position. He says Brahmabhuta prashanatma nasochati nakangshasi. And the symptoms of that person is nasochati nakangshati. That person is beyond lamentation and beyond desiring, because normally those two things are related. One is hankering for what one wants to attain, and one is saddened by what one cannot attain, or especially what one has lost. So that's nakangshati, nasochati nakangshati, without this lamentation for loss and without desire for gain. Samasarveshu bhuteshu. And in that position of that, having attained that spiritual plane, one can see samasarveshu bhuteshu. One can see all other persons, living entities, with equanimity. One is not, looking at other persons with some jaded vision, but one sees all persons equally. Samasarveshu bhuteshu. Then it says, Mad bhaktim labate param. From that plane, having on that liberated position, then bhakti yoga can begin. So it's not the end point, but that's where bhakti yoga actually can begin. So here Krishna says, one who is undisturbed by sorrow, whose hankering for pleasure is gone, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is known as a silent sage of steady mind. Okay. Ya sarvatrana bishnehas, ya sarvatrana bishnehas tat prapya shubha shubham nabinan dati nadveshti tasya pragya pratishtita, ya sarvatrana bishneya yat sarvatrana bishnehas tat prapya shubha shubham nabinandati nadveshti tasya pragya pratishtita, ya sarvatrana bishnehas tat prapya shubha shubham nabinandati nadveshti tasya pragya pratishtita. One who is not attached to anything in this world, who neither enjoys nor resents auspiciousness or inauspiciousness, his wisdom is firmly established. One who is not attached to anything in this world, who neither enjoys nor resents auspiciousness or inauspiciousness, his wisdom is firmly established. So, for this, I will be interested in the guidance of Gurudev and the Vaishnavas, and I'm not concerned with what is auspicious or inauspicious. I'm not going to any astrologer or anyone who will give mundane advice. I don't want my actions to be bound either by auspiciousness, which will supposedly come in terms of what the planets, the alignment of the planets, or what will be seen as good omens or bad omens. That's not my concern. My concern is the service of the Lord, and that will transcend or go beyond what apparently is auspicious or inauspicious for me. I don't want to hear about that, really, in one sense, because by hearing about that may change my mentality towards what I have to do in terms of devotional service. So, Yada samharate chayam kurmon ganivas sarvasha indriyan indriyartebhyas tasya pragya pratisthita. When one's senses are controlled and totally withdrawn from their objects, like the limbs of the tortoise withdrawn in its shell, his wisdom is firmly established. When one's senses are controlled and totally withdrawn from their objects, like the limbs of the tortoise withdrawn in its shell, his wisdom is firmly established. So, withdrawn. This gives, to a certain point, this gives one the idea of mechanically withdrawing from the objects of the senses. But actually what's being described here is on the plane of equanimity, that one's not acting upon the desires of the senses, one's free from that, and rather one is governed by what will be favorable for one's service of the Lord. When one's senses are controlled and totally withdrawn from their objects, like the limbs of the tortoise withdrawn in its shell, his wisdom is firmly established. Of course, this analogy of the turtle reminds one, there are several things that can be remembered by this, but in particular, the example we remember is when Mahaprabhu went into great ecstasy and he left the Gambhir where he was living, even though the doors were locked, and somehow the devotees were all looking for him, and they found him by the gates of the Jagannath temple, the Lion Gate. What's the name of the gate of the Jagannath? Huh? Simadwara, Lion Gate. Mahaprabhu was found, believe when his limbs were withdrawn, he was found somewhat near there in Tailanga, I believe it is, in a cow shed, and his limbs were all withdrawn within like a tortoise, and the cows were so attracted to him, and they're all licking him and everything. But this here it's philosophical point. When one's senses are controlled and totally withdrawn from their objects, like the limbs of the tortoise withdrawn in its shell, one's wisdom is firmly established. So, in other words, one's not allowing the objects of the senses to meet up with the senses to meet up with the objects of the senses. So that's explained here in the next verse. Vishaya vinivartante nira harasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. The embodied being may renounce the sense objects, but the taste for them remains. But that too vanishes for the man of wisdom by his vision of the Supreme. Now, elsewhere, Arjuna, not in this chapter, but elsewhere, Arjuna will say, well, this seems very difficult for one to attain. And so it will be difficult if one is trying to attain these things, detachment from the objects of the senses, etc. If one tries to, as I was saying, tries to do that mechanically, just by mind control and by, severe austerity, one won't be successful in that way. Because the taste for enjoyment will always remain, but one has to become absorbed in a higher standard or what is actually one's purpose. Then if one's focused and sees one's real position as serving the Lord, then it will take one to that divine plane of service where one will actually have developed something of a higher taste. One will have a higher taste. When you have a higher taste, you're not concerned with all lower forms of taste. If you're eating nasty food, but someone brings you nice food, and develop a taste for it. So you can even understand on a mundane level if someone is eating very, very, not very nasty things, like there's some places in the world where the diet is supremely nasty. But if one is taken and given something more tasty, etc., and then one will develop some attachment for a higher taste, and the lower taste will be lost. So in terms of devotional service, if one develops that taste for the service of the Lord, which includes so many things, as Krishna says, we're not concerned with the fruits of our action, but that doesn't mean there aren't any fruits. It's just that those fruits of the action, that is not the point. It says how was it worded, that you are not entitled to the fruits of your action, but it's actually the way it was translated. I liked how it was translated here. So we heard about we're hearing about vyavasayatmika buddhi, developing that focused intelligence. Your right is to your work, never to the fruits. Be neither motivated by the fruit of action, nor inclined to give up action. So your right is to your work, never to the fruits. So that can be misinterpreted by someone saying, well, then you have no right to the fruits. That's true, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you're just on some kind of artificial austere planes. There are fruits, but it's not your right to just be working for those fruits. The fruits may come to you, but that is not your guarantee, that is not your right, but that will come. And then it says, be neither motivated by the fruit of action nor inclined to give up action. So that is not the motivation to enjoy nor to give up, which seems like unenjoyable by you. That's not the consideration. But those things may exist, the fruits, and one will use one's intelligence in the service of the Lord. But Krishna says that is not your right. You don't have a right to be motivated by that and focused on that. So anyway, all these things have to be seen within, you can say, in relationship with the service of the Lord. And we can see just like how there are so many things that we're engaged in, and we are indeed giving up lower tastes because those things seem undesirable. One loses one's taste for them. Just like long ago, I found that what I was interested in pursuing when I was young, those persons who were close to me, my friends when I was young, all that has gone away. And I don't have that desire for those kinds of enjoyments. But somebody could say, oh, well, that's natural. You were 20 then, now you're in your 70s, so naturally you won't have the same desire, motivations for enjoyment. But no, it's not that consideration. because that the enjoyment of this mundane world doesn't go away. It doesn't matter what your age is. There will be still the attractions of what people are motivated by in this world. That will continue to the time of death. That will continue to the time of death. It does. It's not controlled by age or income, etc. Someone may think it is, but that's not really what it is. And I remember Prabhupada once told a story about two men that were talking about that, and they could not come to the point of agreement. One was saying, no, it's not like that. When one becomes old, one loses a taste for those. And they said, they had this conversation, and they said, let us go see. A friend of theirs was in I guess the hospital or something like that, or is dying. He was old in the hospital. And he said, bring so-and-so, I think someone's young daughter or granddaughter, pretty, bring her with you. And they bring her. And then afterwards they said, well, did you see? Where was the person's eyes? Yes, they were concentrated on this young woman. Even though the person's supposedly old and dying, but it never will lose. They will never lose the attraction for the objects of the senses. That's not determined by age. Although Srila Govinda Maharaj spoke of conversation between two persons, but one person was aged and wise, and the person presented some literature to that person that was erotic. And the person who was the wise person, although elderly, he said, what was it he says? He told something to the effect that the call may come in, but there's no one there to attend that call. No one, you're wasting your time. Because I'm not a young man, I'm not going to be motivated by this literature that you're presenting. But that person was obviously a little more enlightened. Anyway, I think we'll stop at this time. It's getting late, but this very nice chapter, The Constitution of the Soul. Tomorrow we'll finish this chapter. This chapter is what we read. When someone leaves this world, we will read this chapter to their family. Sometimes people come to the temple and they want to do some kind of shraddha or some kind of program for their departed ancestor. Sometimes the person that has passed away is not. Sometimes it's a young person or a devotee who was young, and the people come to the temple, and sometimes there's a good number of persons, but they're not really interested in being in the temple or hearing some kind of sermon, so to speak. But they're taken outside, and then we read the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita to the persons. Somebody may be able to hear, somebody less inclined to hear, but this chapter, if someone hears it, it'll take away their grief about this person who is left, just like when Mahaprabhu, he was in the house of Srivas Pandit, I believe, and someone in the family had a young person of the family, a son of theirs, had passed away. And their family's trying to hide their grief. In fact, Srivas Thakur, when he saw that they were in grief, he told them, please maintain your equilibrium, because Mahaprabhu is here to realize kirtan in Srivas Sangam, in the house of Srivas Thakur. And he doesn't want his wife and relatives are crying at the death of their son, but he doesn't want to interrupt Mahaprabhu's kirtan. But Mahaprabhu is omniscient. He says, oh, I can understand. Some tragedy has happened here. What has happened? And then Srivas Thakur says, oh, my son has left. And then Mahaprabhu goes over to the boy who's dead and touches him, and he says, why have you left? And then that person starts talking. Oh, my Lord, I've come here by your divine will, and I was so fortunate to be in the house and related to the family of Srivas Thakur. But now by your divine will, my time is ended here, and I must go on to my next sojourn, my next stop, my next situation. I have to go on. This isn't by your will, I've lived here under these circumstances with the family of Srivas Thakur, but now my time is over, and I must go to my next destination, and that is your divine will. And then, when Srivas Thakur, when his family heard that, then they received some enlightenment. A Mahaprabhu speaking with the dead boy. So that is, something gives you some idea of what is happening. And we're reading the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita to these persons. That's the chapter we're reading now, Constitution of the Soul. And other books, other scriptures, holy books, so many different religions, and they don't give a description of the soul, not like this. This is the second chapter, Sankhya-yoga, the constitution of the soul. So, all right, Maharaj, you have your kartos. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Ganadhara Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raguna H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jao Ite Vignana Shabishta Puran H.I. Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Tasabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Janame Janame More Abilas H.I. Gosai Jabe Branje Koilabas Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Anande bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majjayi Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koryas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koryas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Garanga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashri Srimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashri Srimad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai. Namachar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Srila Prabhu Ki Jai. Premsigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishwavarenya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashri Srimad Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Soquel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Kalinda Yamuna Jo Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Sripad Bhakti Bandhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Gaur Brahmanande Hari Hari Bol. So we want to Say,
Srila
say,
Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj ki
Jai.
we want to bid farewell to Puri Maharaj. He's traveling tomorrow to Ecuador, and it's been very wonderful for us to have Puri Maharaj here with us. Bhakti Bandhava Puri Maharaj ki jai. So I'm going to end here. Jai. Jai Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Govinda Maharaj ki jai.